Y'all know me. Know how I earn a living.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Next Drift. I'm out here on this beautiful evening, about to enjoy a nice pipe. I'm into pipe smoking. Started, actually, it was back at the end of the fall. A buddy of mine got me interested in it, and started collecting some pipes. And pipe smoking is kind of like being a wine connoisseur. I'm going to be smoking this Peterson's Elizabethan mixture. It's one of my favorites. This has the description is a rich flavored blend of fine and dark Virginia tobaccos. Long cut, the mixture has a touch of Louisiana Perique for added zest in the smoking experience. So if you're a pipe smoker, give it a try. Peterson Elizabethan mixture. That's a good one. My other favorite one I have over here is also by Peterson's. This is the Nightcap. Nightcap is really good. I can read this one to you. I'll have to read it upside down. The mixture of Latakia, small-leafed Orient, and Perique create a rich flavored smoking experience. Indulge in a sensation of relaxation and leisure. This is a mixed cut. So this is another good one if you are into pipe smoking. Give this one a try. Peterson Nightcap. But we're going to do the old Elizabethan mixture here. This is a good one. And I figured what I would do in this episode is not just talk about smoking a pipe, but I figured I would share with you an interesting story. It's a fishing story from quite a number of years ago, back in my freshwater bass tournament days. Let me just get this repositioned here while I pack this bowl. This stuff is just... There's so many things that go on in there odor-wise. It just smells great. It burns nice. Let's give it a little pack in there. For any of you people that smoke a pipe, I just kind of load it in and I focus on the draw pressure. I like to, when I get it in there, I kind of look for that sensation of drinking through a straw. Right there, got a little bit of back pressure to it. I'll load it up. I'll probably sit out here for a little bit, so I'll pack it pretty good. And I'll tamp it down with my tamper here. So anyway, let me tell you this this fishing story that you might enjoy. So it was back in, I want to say it was the either late 90s or the early 2000s. And in Connecticut, it was a bass tournament called the Call-In Sick Tournament. And it was very popular. It was in the summertime. It was always held in July. And it was put on by an organization called Riverfront Recapture. And there was a couple guys, one guy in particular. His name was Craig. He was the director of the Riverfront Recapture organization, and they put on a pretty good show. And it would get a ton of boats. It would have 100+ boats, especially back in the mid '90s when it was really, really popular. It would get a bunch of boats, and so we ended up. I fished with my friend at the time, Doug, and Doug was a good fisherman, and we were pretty excited. We had a big drought. It didn't rain for probably a solid 5 or 6 weeks, and the tournament was held on the Connecticut River, and the river level had really, really, really come down. Let me just give it here our first line. Man, I just every time it just smells so good. Give it a nice little tamp down. It's kind of our setup light. And we'll go in for our main light here. Just smells so good. So anyway, so Doug and I had decided we were going to fish this tournament together, and I had a fiberglass bass boat with a 225 on it, 21-foot boat, did 75, 80 miles an hour, whatever it did at the time. It was a big boat, and Doug had a aluminum bass tracker, but it had an inboard jet motor on it. And the difference between the jet motor and the regular bass boat with an outboard is that the jet boat didn't have a propeller. It was like a jet ski. It would suck water in and shoot it out, and that gave you, your propulsion. And you didn't have to worry. You could pretty much drive over 2 inches of water, because you didn't have a propeller. So anyway, given the fact that the river had come way down, and there was this particular area that in the Connecticut River called Keeney Cove, and it was a big cove. It had 3 sections. Had the back section, which was probably a good, 10 or 12 acres, and then there was a highway bridge that had a big underpass that you could drive through, and then you had the middle bay, which was probably 8 acres or so, and then you had a road with a bridge, so a very shallow, narrow bridge. And then you had the front part, which was probably 5 or 6 acres, and then they had the creek that went out to the main river. Well, Doug and I had ended up taking his boat because what we wanted to do was get underneath. The water had dropped down low enough to where we could get underneath this really narrow bridge where nobody else was going to be able to go. And I got to do a relight here. And so we were all excited. There was, I think, 100 or so boats in the tournament. And we head out. We're going to drive up to Keeney Cove, and we're going to go underneath the bridge. And the only way that you could get underneath this bridge, even though it was really low, you had to pull the plug out of the boat and basically fill it with water to sink the boat down low enough to where we could pretty much pull ourselves underneath this underpass, this small little narrow bridge. And we also needed the jet boat because the entrance to the creek was very shallow. We had to drive over trees and logs and pretty much just try to keep the boat in this little tiny, I think there was like some spots there was 3 inches of water we had to drive through to get back to where we wanted to go. So anyway, we launched out of Haddam Meadows State Park, which is in Haddam, Connecticut, close to where I live. And the Keeney Cove was in Glastonbury. So it was probably a good 20 miles, 25 miles north from where we were launching. And, Doug's boat didn't go very fast, probably ran about 40 miles an hour, so 35, 40 miles an hour. And we had a bunch of no-wake zones in between where we took off and where we were going. But we took our time, we got up there, get in through the creek. There was barely any water running through there, so we already knew there wasn't going to be anybody with a fiberglass bass boat in there. We were going to have it all to ourselves. So we get up there, and we get up to this little bridge. And I had the night before, at low tide, gone down there, took my car down there, and I spray painted with green spray paint, fluorescent green spray paint, at low tide, the water line on the side of the bridge. And so that way when we got there in the morning, we knew we were going to have to wait until it was dead low to where we could see that that fluorescent green line and knew that we could get ourselves underneath that bridge with the boat. So we get up to the bridge. The water was still kind of flowing out, still outgoing tide. And it took we waited about 10 minutes. We sat there, we talked about what we were going to do, and waited till we could see that green line. Well, 10 minutes goes by, we see the green line painted on the side of the bridge, and I said, "Whoop, I can see the green line, let's go." So we ended up pulling the plug out of the boat from the inside and started letting water come in. And we waited and waited, kept checking the bilge, making sure we filled the live well up so that way it would weigh down the boat as well. And we basically waited for the boat to sink down about probably 9 inches, 8 or 9 inches, and we got up to the mouth of the little bridge. We laid down. I think we had to take one of the visor off of the steering console, and we laid on our backs. And we basically pulled our way through this bridge from underneath, and it was gross, it was slimy, it was I'm super claustrophobic, it was very, very narrow. Doug was claustrophobic, and boy, I'll tell you, even then we barely had enough room, and we were scraping the top of the engine hood and the trolling motor on the bottom of this bridge, and I had an escape route. I made sure I had a little gap that I could sneak through just in case we got stuck, because if we did end up getting the boat stuck in there and the water came back up, you wouldn't want to be trapped in there. So it was pretty dangerous looking back on it. But when you're going to potentially do well in the tournament and pretty much think you're going to win, you don't really think rationally. So we, I'm not paying too much attention here to my... So long story short, we get under this bridge, we make our way through, turn the bilge pumps on, pump all the water out of the boat, and we headed through the middle pond underneath the highway, got to the highway tunnel, went under there, and we were basically waiting for the tide to come back in, because the moving water, just like out in the ocean, you're waiting for that moving water for the fish to start feeding. And so we fished around that back part, and the grass you could see all the matted grass, and I think we caught a couple smaller fish, 2.5, 3 pound fish in that shallow back bay. But we were really waiting for that water to start moving, because we knew that in this little narrow channel that's underneath this highway bridge on both sides, that the fish were really using that as a funnel, and that they positioned themselves in these chunky riprap rock to feed. And anyway, we were using frogs in the back, waiting for the tide to come back and start moving. And we had these crankbaits tied on. They were Rapala DT10s. It was called Chartreuse Tiger was the color. I still have one. And actually, I think it's the actual bait I was using that day. Next thing you know, we get to that point. It was hot as heck, and the water starts moving. And I said, "All right, Doug, let's get back up to the channel and make sure we're in position for when the tide starts moving. We'll make sure we hit that bite, because there's a window, especially on the Connecticut River or any of the tidal bodies of water, even in the ocean. Sometimes it happens, but mostly in these tidal rivers, there's like a half an hour long window where the bite is at its peak, right? The fish are feeding the most aggressive. And so we got ourselves up to where this particular little spot was in the canal. And I'm on the front of the boat, Doug's on the back of the boat. At this point, I think we had a limit. It was a very small limit, though. You're allowed 5 fish. You're allowed to keep 5 fish to weigh in at the tournament at the end of the day. You can cull, so if you get, you're always culling your smallest fish out. And it's the most weight for the 5 fish wins. And we position ourselves, tide's moving in. I'm up on the front, Doug's on the back. I make a cast with the crankbait, and I hook into a real good one. It was five plus pound fish, largemouth. I'm like, oh, there we go. That's a big one. And we get it up. Doug goes to get the net, nets the fish. We get it in. It's a five plus pounder. I'm like, oh my God, that's a monster. You know, that's what we came for. And we put that fish in the live well. Got all set to go, and I'm thinking, man, that's a nice one. You know, that might win lunker. You know, there's a lunker prize at the end of the day. Biggest fish of the tournament gets extra money. And I make a very next cast, and I hook into another big one. It was like a carbon copy, a clone. Oh my God, Doug, get the net. This is another big one. Very next cast. Yes, now, oh my God, it was another over 5 pound fish. Doug puts in the live well. He says, all right, I gotta pee. Goes to the back of the boat, take a leak, make the third cast, same exact thing. Bang, it just stops, and it's just pulling. And I said, oh my God, Dougie, I got an even bigger one on. And he goes, oh my God, he says, what do you mean? I'm in the middle of peeing, and this fish comes up, and he's thrashing, and it's this giant fish, and it was all of 6 pounds at least. And I said, oh my God, Doug, please. I said, this fish is barely hooked. The crankbait's hanging out of his mouth. I could see it flapping back and forth. And I said, Doug, please get the net. Please get it. He goes, I can't. I'm peeing. And I said, Doug, if you want to win this tournament, I said, you need to come net this fish quickly because I can't get to it. And he just goes, I don't know what to do. I'm in the middle of peeing. I said, Doug, I don't care if I see your wanker. I said, you got to go come net this fish now. And he runs up there, piddle flying in the wind, peeing all over himself, peeing all over the boat, grabs a net, he nets this fish, and this thing was 6.5 pounds. It was a giant. Now remember, this is only the third cast after the tide started moving when we got up to this little spot. And we're laughing, and he goes back, and he's all a mess. Oh, my God, I peed all over myself, peed all over the boat. And we're laughing, and I go to make another cast, the fourth cast, and I catch another one. And this thing, same thing, it just stopped the crankbait dead in its tracks. I set the hook, and the rod just doubled over, and it was moving out, like towards the center of the channel. And I said, oh my God, Doug. He goes, no effing way. I said, yeah, man, this is another one. It's a giant. Well, he goes, oh, I said, get the net. So fish comes up to the side of the boat. It's another 5+ pounder, big largemouth. And he scoops it up. We get it in, and we are just high-fiving. I mean, it was like, I can't even describe it. We were both kind of like, felt like we were floating. We were like in a dream state. It was amazing. And we're laughing and high-fiving, and oh my God, I can't believe it. And this is all happening so fast, And we've never, in a tournament, I mean, that's what you dream of, right? In the tournament, the whole premise of a bass tournament is to go out and catch the biggest limit you possibly can, right? Because the most weight wins. And here we are, and we've got, 4 fish over 5 pounds, or right at 5 pounds, already. I make another cast out there, 5th cast, and sure as heck, I get another monster. And we just can't believe it. It's like, this is unreal. This isn't real. This is a dream. There's no way this is happening. And everything was just, I didn't even feel like the fish was going to come off. And I just slowly wound him in. Crankbait was like across his mouth or down deep in his throat, one of the two. And I remember just thinking to myself, this is our day. It was so meant to be. And Doug comes over and he nets the fish, get it in the live well, and now we've got massive weight. I mean, usually on the Connecticut River, if you catch 14 and 15 pounds with 5 fish, you're pretty much going to win any tournament. I mean, there's sometimes on the rare occasions, especially back at that time, you caught 18 or 19 pounds for 5 fish, you won. I mean, it was, 20 was a guarantee. And we had already had, at that point, at least, 25, 26 pounds with 5 fish. And we're laughing and I go, oh my God, we won this tournament. There's no way. And now, I think we launched at 6 or 7 a.m. It's an 8-hour event. I think we launched at I think it was 6 a.m. takeoff from Haddam Meadows. And by the time we got up to Glastonbury to this spot, it was probably around 7:30 or so. And by the time we caught that 5th fish, it was about 11 o'clock. So we didn't have to be back in for check-in until 2, down back in Haddam. So here we have 5 fish in the live well, 26 pounds at least. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. We still have 4 hours to get back. And we are just tickled to death. I mean, we're sitting there, we just laughing and high-fiving the whole way. It was dreamlike. It was a dream. And we're heading, so we decided, hey, let's get out of here because the water's come back in. We still got to get back underneath that bridge, that little bridge. And now, we got to sink the boat again because the water level has come up since when we came in. So we had to make sure we got back underneath that little bridge. So we get down there to it, and water's like flying in at this point. I mean, it's just coming through, and it's like funneled through this tiny little opening. And we sink the boat down, pull up to it. And the bridge, I forgot to mention this, the bridge was kind of shaped like this. It was like higher on one side, on the main river side of the bridge, and lower on this side. So it like progressively kind of it wasn't perfectly flat and level. It kind of tapered down. So we had to go through the narrower side first. So man, we got up there and that thing was skinny. And I mean, Doug wasn't a big guy. So he stayed on the front, I stayed in the back, and I remember actually like trying to keep myself in the cockpit so I had more room because that bridge was like right here on your nose. I mean, it was like being in an MRI, and I remember just feeling so claustrophobic, but it didn't matter. It didn't even matter at that point because the endorphins were going so much, and knowing that we had this amazing thing just happen, and knowing we were going to win the tournament with all these boats and all the bragging rights and the money that went with it, and just awesome. Anyway, so we get underneath this bridge, made it under, get on the other side. We're laughing because now we know for a fact that like we got out from under that bridge, and we're definitely going to make it back to the weigh-in, and pump the water out. And on the way out of Keeney Cove, when you're heading back out to the main river, there's a creek eventually turns into the cove, turns into this little creek that kind of winds through the woods and out to the main river. And on the way, just before it turned into a creek, there was this little undercut bank, and it wasn't, the creek at this point was only probably, I don't even know, maybe 25 or 30 feet wide. And right along the edge was this undercut bank, and a tree had fallen. So there was this little rip of water that came right underneath this tree. Well, we're using the electric trolling motor on the front to get out. And I'm on the front and kind of going, using the trolling, the foot pedal, and getting us out. Next thing I know, I hear, and I look, and Doug had picked up one of these hollow frogs that floats. And I remember, it's burned in my head, just like every one of those fish were that day, but this was the special one. I watched that frog land, like just in the perfect little meaty part of this little kind of undercut spot under the tree. And I just knew that thing was going to get annihilated. And Doug twitched that frog one time, went bloop, and all you heard was this suction. No splash, no nothing, just like a big bluegill sucking a freaking cricket off the surface. And I said, oh my God, that's a big one. And Doug everything was like a slow motion. Doug sets the hook, this big mouth comes up, wagga, wagga, wagga. I said, oh my God, Dougie. And he's winching him in, oh my God. Now remember, Doug hadn't caught any of the fish that we had caught in the back, because he was just standing on the back deck, and I only made 5 or 6 casts, in this spot. before we left. So, poor Doug didn't really even get to fish much. So he's all excited. He's went, oh my God, it's a big one. He's reeling in, things going crazy. We get up next to the side of the boat. I get the net, scoop it up, and it's another 5.5 pounder. I said, oh my God. And we're just like belly laughing at this point. It was like, it was so unreal. I can still remember every piece of it. I remember every minute of that day. And we get to fish, and we're both looking at each other. I'm down in the cockpit near the live well, and I'm holding this fish, and Doug's standing here on the back. He's on the back deck, and he's standing there, and we are just laughing. We're like face to face, laughing. Oh my God! And he goes, oh my God! He goes, what do we have to wait? I said, I don't even know, Doug, at this point. I said, we got a lot. And then all of a sudden, it kind of like dawned on me, and I said, Doug, I said, we don't need this fish. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, Doug, I said, we don't need it. We already have enough. We won. And I was basically implying to him, hey, let's just throw it back, because at this point we already have like such an enormous amount of weight for that time of year when the conditions were horrible we knew we were going to be horrible for everybody else. It was the most epic day that I've ever had after fishing the Connecticut River for 30-something years. And I said, Doug, let's just put it back. He said, are you out of your effing mind? I said, no, Doug. I said, let's just put it back. I said, we don't need it. We already have more than enough to win. I said, and I just know how these people are going to react. And it took some convincing, but we ended up putting that fish back in the water. And I felt bad because Doug didn't really feel like he contributed to the fish, to the bag that we had. But he did, because he was the guy netting them. I mean, if he didn't net a couple of those fish, we wouldn't have had them. Probably could have come off the hook or whatever. But so he was a big, important piece of that. And I said, Doug, I said, no one's gonna believe this. I said, this is the extreme of extremes. And I started thinking about it. I remember sitting there looking at the live well, full of fish. And that was like the time when I realized for the first time that the whole premise of a bass tournament, of going out and catching as many fish as you possibly could and getting the biggest fish in the lake, right? Like that's the tournament. That's what a tournament is. Go out and catch the 5 biggest fish that you possibly can. Well, I can tell you this. That's not always true. Actually, that whole premise really isn't true, because unfortunately, especially in bass fishing, people don't like to lose. And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they don't do as well as they think they should, or somebody does better than them, there was a reason why somebody beat them. That wasn't because they were better than them. It had to have been that they cheated or something like that. And so that was the case. That was a tournament, the only time, the first time, where I actually said to myself, my God, I said that whole thing about the premise of going out and catching the 5 biggest fish you can to win the tournament, really, you don't really want to do that. You just want to catch the 5 biggest fish that you need to win, not the biggest fish that you can. Because we got back to the weigh-in early, and our 5 fish weighed close to 27 pounds. They were all largemouth. It was 26, I think it was 26.56. Dougie, if you're out there and you remember, 26.56 or 26.66, something like that, something crazy. We won the tournament, 5 fish, 26.66 or whatever it was. And second place was only I think a little over 14 pounds. So we beat, out of 100 plus boats, we beat second place by 14 pounds. Burrow would know it was 12 something, because I remember winning by 14 pounds, so it would have been 12 something. So we had 26.6 something, and second place had 12 and change. So we ended up, it was 14 pounds we won by. And it was such a dream day that there unfortunately was a few people that accused us of cheating. And it was hurt. That was hurtful. Not unexpected. I can say that. Um, but it was hurtful and obviously not true. We caught all those fish legitimately. We just had an absolutely remarkable day of fishing. It was a dream day, the dream of dream days. And so, anyway, I wanted to share that story with you. And just like I said, maybe there's a lesson in that. You know, if somebody else does better than you in any sort of competition, they be careful. Don't jump to the conclusion that somebody cheated. Those things can be hurtful because in this situation like mine, yeah, I got to be honest. If somebody else had done that and I didn't, I would have thought that was just absolutely insane. But I witnessed it. I lived it. That stuff happens. So be careful, especially in a competition of, when things look a certain way. It doesn't mean that somebody didn't cheat, but when they look a certain way, don't jump to conclusions, because if somebody beats you legitimately like that and you call them a cheater, it's really bad. It can hurt somebody's, it can just destroy somebody. You really ruin their character. You ruin, you can ruin just the whole competition. And luckily, it didn't really, years went by, and I think people, the guys that knew how much time, I mean, I lived on the Connecticut River, I lived in Glastonbury, fished out there all the time. The guys that were close knew that Doug and I had legitimately did that. And so they were pretty good about, kind of, they weren't happy we won, and they weren't happy that we did that well, but they knew we caught those fish. And great memories. I'll have them forever. I still have some of the pictures. I'll have to find it. I'll post it up. And it was just a great time. So anyway, little story for you to end the evening. We're going to have some more videos coming up. Hopefully we're going to go fluke fishing for the season opener this weekend. And we'll have a really good time. Everybody have a good night. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, please. Click the like button. Share the videos. Helps us out a lot. I would really appreciate it. I think we bring you some pretty good content. Take care, everybody.